together with the World Bank, becomes a transformational force. This is how we do it.
Baby. There we go.
This is going to be a little spicy. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today I've got something special for you here. I've got a former WEF globalist elitist banker, just like Mark Carney, who's now a whistleblower on ESG, green climate, net zero, this entire thing. Mark Carney's mission that he's trying to push on Canada while he prospers in America and China. Let's jump into this. This is Desiree Fixler. I believe she worked for Deutsche Bank, and she's coming out and calling out Mark Carney as being a liar. As it says here, my mission is to end ESG, DEI in the corporate world, free enterprise, and free speech activist.
We have an enormous opportunity to bring climate change into the heart of every financial decision.
So just 2 days ago, she put out this tweet here. It says, Canada, your crisis isn't U.S. tariffs, it's Mark Carney. He's lying. He will never grow your economy. Carney is a managerial elitist pushing the Davos agenda, net zero, CBDC, central bank digital currency, DEI, and many other strangleholds on growth and freedom. I know because I was one of them. So she's a whistleblower.
Skepticism about ESG labels or sustainable labels, and that again is one of the reasons we're having this ruthless, relentless focus on net zero, because in the end, look, we can't stabilize the climate unless we get to net zero.
I traveled in Carney's WF circles for years. These folks don't care about ordinary people. They're only driven by autocratic power and money. Free your country from this authoritarian heist, unleash drilling, restore meritocracy, and take back your prosperity. Dump him. Wow. A former WF elitist calling out Mark Carney here.
To reach net zero, every country, every company, every bank, every investor, every pension fund around the world will need to make some big changes.
If you go down, she's got multiple posts here. This is a much watch. Repeal net zero regulations here on CBC. So taking a further look at her here, says 2023 most influential sustainable finance. So she was really deep into it. If we take a look here, we've got Reuters, we've got World Economic Forum, Bloomberg on her LinkedIn account, finance professional, ESG whistleblower, board member, speaker, sustainable finance advisory committee member. And as she said here, Global Futures Council member at the World Economic Forum. So she did ride with that group. Next up, I got a clip here from Bloomberg Philanthropies. This is Ajay Banga. You can see his name right here, Ajay Banga, president of the World Bank. Now, if you're an avid watcher of my channel, you know where this is going. This guy, head of the World Bank, Oxfam report came out showing that over the course of, I believe, 2017 to 2023, there was $41 billion missing, unaccounted for in their bookkeeping. And here they're talking about net zero, climate change, ESG, all this crap.
Thinking that you can segregate these into little buckets is a luxury we don't have. And that leads to the need for us to work quicker, turn projects around faster. We've turned down the time from getting from a project being discussed to approved from 19 months to 16, headed to 12.
But the more complex part is finding those companies in industries that have high emissions. Think of the steel industry, aviation, much of manufacturing, and finding those companies that have plans, that have to make big investments to get those emissions down.
All that combined with leveraging our balance sheet in a different way.
Your balance sheet, the one that's incomplete, that one?
What we're up to. It leads to some things. A couple of them is last year at COP28, you and I were there together, and we announced that we put 45% of our money into climate finance by 2025. We're actually going to reach very close to that number this year itself, up from 30-something% just a year and a half ago.
Jumping back to Desiree Fixler and her X account, we're going to ping pong between her tweets and this Business Forum 2024 with the World Bank and Mark Carney. Take a listen to this. She completely exposes ESG and climate finance for being a scam, and she got fired for it. Yes, ESG is a multi-trillion-dollar marketing scam promoted by vested interest groups to overcharge for underperformance under the guise of saving the planet. Saving the planet. Green this, green that. It just lined the pockets of net zero advocates like Mark Carney while driving up energy costs for folks globally. Shameful. As we can see here, Vesper posting this clip, Desiree Fixler, whistleblower at DWS, got fired for proving that companies were misleading their investors. This is huge.
Desiree Fixler was the head of ESG at DWS, big German asset management company spun out of Deutsche Bank.
She really exposed the practical problems that big investment firms have measuring this investment for good and proving this investment for good.
There was a tremendous gap between what the company was saying publicly about their ESG capabilities to what they were actually doing internally. You can't mislead your shareholders and investors. You can't misrepresent, and you certainly can't missell your products. Wirecard was placed as a top position in a DWS ESG flagship fund in 2020. So at a time when E&Y won't sign off on their financials, DWS actually upgrades Wirecard on better corporate governance and cites business ethics. Marcus Brown, the CEO of Wirecard, has been arrested. Jan Marsalek is on the run, and the company is insolvent. And finally, at my last board meeting, I pretty much banged on the table that these are urgent issues. It was a matter of a few weeks later, I got fired. I knew that greenwashing was absolutely pervasive in the market. ESG became a huge marketing tool for other asset managers. I knew that most of the claims out there were bullshit.
Wow. So DWS is a asset management group, a lot like Brookfield Asset Management. She exposes it. She's exposing Mark Carney. I would really like to hear what Mark Carney has to say about this if he was asked at a press conference.
So you can take this plumbing and then you can put big things onto it and have the ambition to drive. But you can't do that if the basics of the bank aren't working the way a better bank should work.
A better bank. These elitists are always better than everyone else. And as you see here, Mark Carney sitting next to Ajay Banga of the World Bank. I told you there was ties there. Mark Carney and his GFANZ Glasgow Net Zero Alliance company works directly with the World Bank. Here they are sitting on this Bloomberg panel.
So speed, scale, and sisterhood.
Simplicity.
And simplicity and sisterhood.
Gotta get stuff.
Which is collaboration. So, Kristalina, you're just starting your second term. If you haven't made poverty history on a livable planet by the end of your first term, you have to do the second.
Great.
She says Canada needs a stronger economy, but Mark Carney will stand in the way, pushing Trudeau's globalist net zero agenda. He's an original architect of the climate hysteria, using his advisory roles to cash in while driving energy prices sky high.
So it works. But second term, and I mean, many amazing things in the first term, but one of the things that really struck me is you, and with partners obviously, but you turned dead money, SDRs, into action with the Resilience and Sustainability Trust at a time when it was absolutely essential. And I wonder if you could draw that out a bit more in terms of the overall impact of some of the things the IMF is doing, including in collaboration with the World Bank.
We got this tweet saying the Bloomberg editorial team is spreading false narratives again. Corrective points below. Renewables aren't cheaper. They're intermittent, needing fossil fuel backup. CO2 is no pollutant, it's life. Insurance costs soar as more people move to disaster zones. Remember that video I showed you of Diana Fox Carney, Mark Carney's wife, being the moderator of that panel that had King Charles?
Is a noble pursuit.
We need global zero. We need that not just to be in Europe and in the US. We need that all around the world.
Climate change is an existential threat. We all recognize that. There's increasing urgency around that.
We can deliver the net zero world that you've demanded.
Well, here's Desiree Fixler with King Charles. She totally rides with this elitist group, so it's very interesting that she's completely blowing the whistle on this on Mark Carney. Celebrating service and impact investing, but maybe not my nerves babbling Buckingham Palace 2018. So this was back when she was in it.
What we are experiencing today is really remarkable.
It is remarkable that you guys keep pushing this agenda on countries like Canada, where it's causing poverty instead of solving poverty as you claim you want to be doing.
We have lived through unprecedented shocks. Pandemic, war in Europe, crisis of energy and food prices, inflation, interest rates, and yet you look at the world economy, this year it would go 3.2%. Next year we expect 3.2%. It did not collapse. And the question is, why? What made it so resilient? And it is putting in place sound foundation of good policies and strong institutions.
That's right, good policies and sound institutions, like all these money bags here and their net zero agenda, ESG across the world, and they'll save the planet as long as you send the money through the World Bank. They don't have good bookkeepers though, so don't expect your money to go where you want it to go because we don't know where it goes. She's got another tweet here back from March 25th saying, just remember, he's a net zero nut that cashed in while he drove up energy prices. I mean, this is the guy who was championing the deal to buy that U.S. colonial pipeline while he was chair of Brookfield Asset Management. Then he says, no pipelines in Canada. I've been saying this for a couple weeks now. This guy's protecting his investments in pipelines in other countries, so we don't prosper. This guy can't be our prime minister. ESG has been a disaster. For anyone who's not aware, ESG is environmental, social, and governance. It says here it's been a disaster, overpriced, underperforming assets, high costs, low returns versus S&P 500, inefficient corporate bloat, DEI, ESG distract from core business functions. So jumping ahead here, there's an absolute cringe moment.
Don't tell them how to use the money. We say, here it is. You can address this danger of climate change. And then comes the World Bank with a powerful program of investments. So this fiscal space that we create together with the World Bank becomes a transformational force. This is how we do it.
That's how we do it, baby. There we go. There you go.
Hey,
So
she left out the last word, baby.
I know. That's how we do it, baby. I thought everyone was going to, that was where the crowd was supposed to come in. So, and that's the handoff. So she and the IMF hand off this baby.
This is icky. This is cringe and icky.
In macro-micro coordination to the World Bank. And what do you do with that fiscal capacity if countries choose to pursue it?
We got Desiree Fixler on this podcast here, the Ayaan, Hirsi, Ali podcast. In this one here, she confirms that they're using people's emotions, saving the planet, saving the poor as their backbone to scam everyone with this ESG climate funding crap that they're doing around the world.
Greta Thunberg or Greenpeace activists, it does mean climate action. It does mean saving the planet and saving people.
So they're sincere in what they're doing.
There is an activist element to it.
Mark, one example of that. In fact, the first example, we're working on this together, is the idea of getting electricity to African in the world. If you think about the African continent, 600 million people in Africa do not have any electricity. So when you fly over the continent at night and you see dark areas everywhere, it's not because there aren't people. It's because they're living the way their forefathers did. And I think in the 21st century, that's a relatively shameful situation.
It's also shameful to lose $41 billion, not have that on the books. That's also shameful. Are these guys actually providing electricity to Africa, or are they stealing tax dollars from around the world? That's the question.
Now, ESG can also mean for Wall Street, because again, this is how it's been rebranded. It's all about different language.
Mark Carney has been behind that. Essentially, it's his movement. The whole net zero, that's him. It's him. So as she just said, they're using something that tugs on people's heartstrings, saving the planet, saving the people, and then running all this dirty, crappy business through it, greenwashing, coding their business model in this green agenda. Anything green must be good. That's the image they're portraying here.
And one that, if you think of electricity as a basic human right, health, education, your elevator works, things work, refrigerators, medicines being kept cold, safety with street lights. Everything we take for granted depends upon electricity. And they don't have it at all. I'm not talking about intermittent and brownouts. I'm talking about zero.
Next up, she confirms exactly what I just said, that they're just using this whole thing to make money.
I think that some CEOs recognize this is a great arbitrage. This is the best marketing campaign. We can just change all labels and change labels to climate action and diversity and charge higher fees.
And everybody will look away.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. We can.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone will look away because it's good for the planet. Don't want to question that. Don't want to question that the World Bank somehow mismanaged $41 billion US dollars. Don't want to question that. No paper trail. Where'd the money go? Nobody knows.
Make statements and it will distract people from all all the like the nonsense shenanigans or like bad stuff we're doing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For all of those reasons, this was the greatest thing since sliced bread.
That's just it. They found a new way to do better business. That's all it is. They're just taking advantage of a certain sector and taking advantage of impoverished people or certain areas of the planet that are affected by certain climate systems and using it for bigger business.
So what we've committed to do with the African Development Bank and a couple of other partners is to reach 300 million out of the 600 billion with renewable energy by 2030. It will take a lot of work for governments.
Can we just stop and reflect on that for a second? And then you go, 300 million people with electricity by 2030. Right. I mean, it's a remarkable...
I mean, the bank did 117 million people connected to electricity.
These guys pose as these virtuous white knights that are saving everyone, when really they're getting called out by members of their own community, as we see here with Desiree Fixler. They're not who they're portraying themselves to be.
Are they actually showing profit?
So the answer is yes. And again...
And where's this profit coming from?
Well, because it resonated with investors. So you have investors that are so excited that they can, use their money and they can make more profits than ever and they can do good. They can change the world.
Yeah, it's just tugging on those heartstrings. But as she mentioned with her tweet, often getting lower returns than the S&P 500.
So you see that Wall Street mobilizes trillions of dollars into ESG investment products.
And is this coming just from investors or is also government taxpayer money flowing into
So it is
ESG?
It is both, because you have, of course, government agencies investing hugely into climate action, and it's just private capital. But, please note, in that private capital bucket, of course, you're talking about pension funds, which is that's what we contribute to.
And as I've shown, the World Bank gets a lot of money from Canada, $3.488 billion in the last 10 years in the Liberals' reign of terror here. And once again, money unaccounted for. I'll link this up at the end if you guys want to check out this full podcast. Very interesting.
About 20 billion from our International Development Association, the part of the bank that gives money at concessional and grant terms to the poorest countries in the world, which, by the way, is coming up for a replenishment in December, which is...
Oh, is that replenishment? But you guys don't have 41 billion on the books. Somehow that money got lost. These guys are unbelievable. This guy, head of the World Bank, sitting here with Mark Carney. I'm not believing a word that's coming out of any of their mouths. Jumping back to Desiree's tweets about ESG, just remember, this is a WF, a former WF elitist, globalist banker, just like Mark Carney blasting, which is essentially his baby. Net zero is Mark Carney's baby. Just listen to what she has to say. Discriminatory hiring, gender and race quotas over merit-based selection. It should always be merit-based. Whoever is best for the job. It doesn't matter where they come from, the color of the skin. And the best example is an air traffic controller. Do you want to have DEI hiring practices for air traffic controllers? No, you want the person who's the best to do that job because it's so important. But every job should be like that. It should always be merit-based. We got silenced employees, fear of speaking out against the woke, harmful ESG regulations, market confusion, massive bureaucratic red tape, soaring energy costs, unreliable renewables require fossil fuel backup and grid upgrades, UK and EU in productivity decline, ESG's role in global conflict, ESG policies contributed to the Ukraine event over there, no real environmental progress, carbon emissions.
You are helping to move the world onto a more sustainable trajectory with net zero.
So after seeing all of that, I'm just a guy on the internet digging up stuff, bringing stuff together. When you have real people who were real bankers like Desiree Fixler coming out as a whistleblower against the WF and the elites, the globalists, just like Mark Carney, this is the definition of Mark Carney. And she's not even calling out in general people like Mark Carney. She's literally calling out Mark Carney, saying he would be a disaster for Canada. The real question is now, will the common people of Canada who aren't really paying attention to what's going on in our country, will they figure out who Mark Carney really is before it's too late?